Hi, loves, and welcome to the With Love Always podcast, a podcast to help you live the life you were created for. We are your hosts and your friends, Bree
and Marissa,
and we're so grateful you're here.
We pray you listen and leave feeling more inspired, encouraged, and uplifted.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode. We are so grateful as always that you're tuning in and joining in on our conversation today. For today's conversation, we are truly just going to be talking about the feelings of being stuck in your life. I truly, like I always say, probably every single episode, everything that we talk about on this podcast is so inspired by our life and not always inspired by having already walked through it, but currently being in the middle of it. And when I was thinking about things that have been on my heart and have been prevalent on my mind in my life and things that I'm honestly just battling with right now, it truly is that feeling of being stuck in my life and feeling like I'm kind of in this season of my life where it doesn't feel as if there's a lot of momentum behind things. I'm kind of not that I'm like in a bad season. I'm in a beautiful season, but I don't feel like I see any momentum or change or anything approaching in my life. And I know for myself, sometimes when we feel like there's not a lot of momentum happening, it can feel like we're stuck and it can feel like nothing's really going on for us. But I wanted to introduce this conversation today for anyone out there who's maybe feeling the same way. Maybe you feel like you're quote unquote stuck in your life. You feel like you're in between of a season of your life of waiting for another blessing, having already experienced a previous blessing. Whatever it is, I just want you to feel so seen and so loved and so held in this conversation today. And for you to know that despite anything you ever see on social media and online, you are not alone in the feelings of being stuck in your life. So we pray that today's conversation can inspire some new perspective and can also just give you some hope to maybe even recognize greater blessing that you are experiencing in this season of feeling stuck in your life. So when I mention the season of feeling like you're kind of in between blessings, I want to break down at least my thought process of what I feel like I realized within the past couple days and even my own internal process of why am I particularly feeling like I'm so stuck in this season of my life, even though anyone looking at my life would be like, Bree, that's so not true. Even Marissa would be like, Bree, that's so not true. But yet I think I have conversations with myself. I'm having conversation with friends where so many of us are feeling like, oh, I'm just stuck. Like nothing's really happening for me. Nothing's going for me. When the perspective of everyone else around you is like, what are you talking about? You have so many beautiful gifts and blessings in your life. But I think what I realized, at least speaking on behalf of my story and my present moment, is that it is so true that we are so prone to define our life by major milestones. Mm-hmm. And so when I think about my life, like in major milestones, I've defined my life by it's, in more recent years, it's moving to LA, starting a new job, starting this podcast, running a marathon, doing all these things. And because some of those milestones are now behind me and I've been walking in some of those blessings for a while, it's been easy for me to look at my life and be like, wait, nothing's happening. Mm-hmm. I don't have any major milestones in front of me right now. I don't have any, career changes. I don't have any moves. I don't have a relationship. I'm not getting married. There's nothing really major that I'm like defining my life by or any major goal that I'm working towards right now. So it's easy for me to look at my life and feel like, oh my gosh, I'm so stagnant. Like nothing is happening. But I think what I've realized, and as I was just, even preparing my heart to invite this conversation today, is that I think more time in our life than not is actually not going to be those major milestones in our life. Like it's not going to be the big move. It's not going to be the big career change. It's not going to be getting married and having a kid. Like those are major milestones. But actually what our life is going to be defined by more are the seasons of the in-between. It's going through the process. It's going through the journey of hitting the major milestone, but then walking in the major milestone, whether that is like Marissa, for example, like getting married and then being married. Like that is the process that can feel like the in-between, but that's actually a majority of your life. It is the in-between. It's not the milestone itself. It's all the moments afterwards. For me, the milestone was moving to LA, but it's not just moving to LA that is meant to define my life. It's the life I build afterwards. You know, it's not running a marathon, it's all the things afterwards, like, you know, whatever that may be for your life. And I think I realized that I was like, wait, we're always seeking for the next big thing that we forget that most of our life is meant to be defined by the here and the now.
Yeah, I think that is so well put. And actually, my husband and I were talking about this, I want to say just a couple days ago. And he mentioned something that I even had kind of overlooked. And it was how I brought home, I don't know if you guys know, but like Trader Joe's, where the flower section is, there's also like these little plants. They have really good plants. That's like a side tip.
Cutie.
And so I got this little olive plant that was super tiny. It was maybe like 9 inches tall. And I just saw it and I brought it home and I just planted it like right outside of where we film in our studio, not really thinking much of it. And it was kind of like tucked away. And I'm like, I'm just going to plant it and like see what happens. And I think it now, I want to say, is like maybe like 3 or 4 feet tall, and it's truly becoming like a tree. And it's funny because it's something that obviously it's been gradually growing, but my husband and I just had this moment the other day and we're like, when did this like tiny plant that was like just a handful of inches suddenly turn into a tree? Not only is it tall, but it actually is being built out like very deep with all of these other branches. And he was like, you know, I feel like that's kind of been our time here because we planted it like right as we moved to this house. So it was maybe like a year and a half ago. And it's just been one of those things where it's like the big change was us moving here. And then now being settled in life, it was just kind of a moment to look back. And he was like, the moment wasn't when we planted the little plant. It's the fact that it now is growing into this tree with strong roots that we couldn't even move it out if we tried. It's just like growing and thriving, and it's going to soon take over that area. And that happened not with our like conscious effort, but just because it had like the right soil and it like the soil and conditions, and it just was able to thrive. And it wasn't us like looking at it every single day waiting for it to grow. It was what happened in that year and a half where we weren't paying attention. And I feel like that was just like a metaphor for what we've experienced in any season of life we've been in. It's not the like daily check-ins that you see the change. It's when you look back a year and a half and you evaluate like, where was I at internally? And you suddenly realize like, wow, so much has changed and happened. And so I don't mean to jump ahead of what we're going to talk about, but that was just a way that maybe that metaphor might help a little bit as we start to think of like this in between where it actually is like a period of growth. And so I think just getting us to see like, where did we start? Where are we now? And how can we actually like celebrate the in between season?
That is actually so powerful. Like, I love that metaphor, but also it's like something that you've seen in the physical, but it is such a metaphor for our lives. And I feel like I had such a similar moment. So I was just in Austin, Texas, which is where I lived before I moved to LA. And I was there for a full week and got to see some friends that I haven't seen, some in a full calendar year, some in almost 2 full calendar years since before I actually moved. So I was truly embraced with people who have not seen me either since before I moved to LA altogether or since I had last been in Austin very intentionally. And it was just so beautiful, just such deep, intentional time well spent. But the biggest and most daunting question, you know, when you haven't seen someone in so long is, how have you been? And you're like, and in my head, oh my gosh, am I so well aware that God has done a tremendous amount of work in my life since I've moved here? Like, that is just inevitable. Like, I am so well aware of that. But upon being asked that question, I was like so stumped because I was like, not much is happening, like life is life, same old, same old. And then I think it was such a moment where some of my friends were actually pointing out in me after, not seeing me for like a year of like, Brie, your presence feels so different. You feel so much more grounded. Oh my gosh, I can see this growth in you. I can hear the way you're speaking about this. That was so different than the way you used to speak about this a year ago. And I think I actually had more moments than not where I was being reflected by people who haven't seen me in the day-to-day by, I see myself day-to-day, so I can't recognize the growth. But it was in those moments that I was like, wait, wow, like God has done more in this past year than I even realize. And I think it's exactly to the metaphor of your plant that you shared. It's like we see ourselves every single day that we don't always see what the growth is meant to signify. In my head, the milestones that I've had in my life have already come and gone, but I'm disregarding what the day-to-day life in LA has brought me. And sometimes what it takes is a moment to like really reflect of like, no, maybe it's not a major milestone, but it's the process of the days in between or the days that have happened since. And I feel like that was a really big moment that also inspired this conversation today for us to also encourage you guys to remind yourself that you might not even be aware of how much you are growing and how much is actually changing, even if you don't feel like it's these big major moments. And another key moment that actually inspired this conversation too was I was at the beach this past weekend, and I think the topic of like reflecting on the past year of our life came up. And one of my friends is in a season where she is likely going to get proposed to very soon, and like marriage is around the corner. And so looking at her life and reflecting on the joy that's ahead of her, it's like, oh yeah, you have so much to look forward to. So much is about to change. And I think that naturally brought the conversation to myself and to our other friends. And we're like, yeah, nothing's changing. Like everything's the same. But then this friend was like, reflecting to me. She was like, Brie, didn't you just celebrate like living alone this past year? And that's just like one little example. But I was like, wait, how crazy is it that in our lives in general, we are so quick to forget like how much is changing in our lives. Like I literally forgot, even though I just re-signed my lease for another year and I'm living alone, I've officially hit a 1-year mark of living alone. And I just signed my lease to live alone for another year in literally the apartment of my dreams, or the space of my dreams. And she reflected that towards me. She was like, Brie, like, how could you forget that it's just been a year? Like it feels like you've been there forever. It feels like you've been walking this blessing forever. But remember where you were at just a year plus ago. Like you were in such a different season with like your living circumstances. And I was like, in that moment, not even just with my living and like living alone, but it's the concept itself of like, we are also so quick to forget how much things have changed because we normalize them. You know what I mean? And so I just had like so many mind-blowing moments of like, okay, I needed to receive that. I needed to remind myself that I'm not quite as stuck as I might feel. Yeah. And I guarantee that you guys are probably not as stuck as you might feel in this very moment. Yeah, where I really want to encourage you guys, if you are feeling stuck, no matter what area of your life you're reflecting on, and I think at least for myself as like someone who is single and I have a lot of single friends, I think I hear so many of my single friends, saying like, oh, I'm so stuck in this area of my life. I'm so discouraged, whatever it may be. But then I'm like, oh my gosh, like reflect on your dating experiences this past year. Reflect on all the ways that God has grown you this past year. It's like, you're not stuck, you're growing, and you're still being crafted into the wife you're intended to be the woman who's prepared to meet the husband that you're one day going to have. And even like friends who feel stuck, including myself, sometimes in my career, in my purpose in life, I'm like, I have to take a different approach and different perspective. Instead of feeling like there's no momentum in your life and like nothing is changing or shifting, what if, just as Marissa's story about the olive tree is truly a perspective that we adopt upon ourselves? What if you really take a moment to press in and realize of like how much has truly changed and grown, and all the new buds that you have blossomed and all the roots that you have planted, that maybe on the outward to the world and even to yourself, you have nothing to show. But if there's internal growth and if there's internal shifting in you, that is tremendous. And that is actually going to be the thing that does lead you and guide you to the blessing of the next major milestone. But I think the thing that I have to realize, and I encourage you guys to realize as well, is, you know, life is not going to be composed, as I kind of mentioned before, it's not composed of just the major milestones. You are not going to remember your life only by the major milestones. It really is the moments in between that nobody sees. It really is the moments that feel like they're not noteworthy, but that is the process that changes everything for you. That is the process that crafts your life. So I really encourage you guys to not disregard where you feel like you're at right now, because your perspective on where you're at is going to be the thing that either propels you and defines you forward, or it's going to be the thing that holds you back from believing that you're even able to reach and achieve and step into the next major milestone into your life. And I think too, like our days are really going to be so defined by what we are doing in the moments when we feel like nothing is happening for us, because that is what is shaping us to be able, like I said, to receive the next major moment in your life, or to feel like you're worthy of the next major moment of your life. And yeah, I mean, I feel like I'm honestly encouraging myself right now in this process. And it's so funny how sometimes, at least speaking on my behalf, what it takes for me to encourage myself and to get myself out of sometimes a really dark or discouraged mindset is to literally like encourage you guys or to like encourage someone else.
So true.
Because like I would, like the things that I'm sharing with you guys, I cannot even tell you how much I need to hear that, because I have been feeling so stuck. And literally as of yesterday, I was like, God, what am I doing with my life? Like, I feel like I'm doing nothing. I feel like I'm amounting to nothing. When are things going to happen for me? When am I going to feel so in complete alignment with my purpose in life? When am I going to feel like I have such a grasp on what I want to commit my life to and the career I want for the rest of my life? Like, when am I going to meet my husband? Like, all these things, I was honestly spiraling. And I was just like, God, I feel like nothing is happening for me. Nothing. And that sounds so sad. But also I share that because, like I said earlier, it's like someone could look at my life. And I even think, like I said, when I was back home in Texas, my friends were looking at my life and they're like, Brie, so much is happening for you. Everything, like you look like you're thriving, you're this. And though that is true in ways, that doesn't disregard from the fact that I still very much have moments where I'm like, it feels as if my life is absent of anything really going for me, which is not true though, but that's how I feel. And so, yeah, I share that because I don't know, it's just my perspective in those moments, my perspective yesterday, my perspective waking up to a new day with new joy and new opportunity to redefine how I'm looking at my life is an opportunity for me to remember it's like, things may feel like they're not happening, but actually it's God giving me building blocks to what is meant to happen. If it has not yet arrived, whatever you're waiting for, whatever you're hoping to see, whatever answers you're hoping to receive, whatever blessing you're hoping to walk into, it cannot exist without this season of being like, what's happening? It cannot exist without the season of the process. It cannot exist without this season of feeling temporarily stuck in order to actually be ready to receive the fullness of the gift that is ahead of you.
That is so, so good. And honestly, something I've been reflecting a lot on is just like, where I currently am at in this season. And I don't know why, if this is a 20s thing or if this is just the rest of our life, because there's so much like opportunity and ambiguity. It's like, we always feel behind and ahead in like some area. And I just do think we can so easily just all of a sudden like spiral into this, like, why is this not here yet? But something I think I've realized, like, for context, there were two things I think I was really praying for, honestly, in the past couple years of my life. And it was to find a job that really was aligned with my purpose and that I wanted to wake up and be excited to go to work. And the second one was I really wanted to feel like a sense of community and that I was doing life with people, like actually beyond just having friends, but really in a community and like a body of people where we are like pursuing the Lord and like pursuing our dreams together. And so I had been praying for that for years. Honestly, like moments where I was just like, God, why have you not brought this to me yet? But in now, like just having received these things, I feel like in this year, what I've realized is, yes, both of those things are so great. Like so thankful for my job, so thankful for the community that's continuing to be built. But honestly, what makes it so great is what was prepared in my heart in order to receive those things. Because honestly, like this job, I would not, had I received it even a week, a year, a month, a week sooner, I don't think I would have recognized and truly been fulfilled by it. I honestly don't think I would have taken this job. And even with the friends, amazing people, but I think maybe they just like weren't the people I saw myself doing life with, or didn't know if we'd have things in common. And it wasn't until we actually like just naturally started like being in circles together where I realized, wow, I think like these are the people I'm supposed to pursue life with in this season. And I don't even think either of those things are my like forever. But it just has been so cool to see that what actually is like the breakthrough was not receiving those blessings as great as they are. It actually was everything that happened before in the years to come, where I started viewing friendships and work and everything so differently. And I started to just listen to what God had to say about who I am and what I was created for. And I think it's those transformations that now allow me to be so grateful and so joyful, despite whether or not those things will come or go, because inevitably I think things will like fit together in some seasons and they won't in others. But I think it's just like, wow, I'm so thankful that I got to the place where I can be someone who enjoys work, like regardless of what it is, or it can pour into people, even if we're different ages or they live not super close to me. Like, I just feel like getting to that place and having that realization of everything that God has been preparing me for, I'm now getting to experience the blessings of that. And then the byproduct is my circumstances changing, but that's not actually the thing I needed to feel unstuck. It was the work he needed to do in my heart to get me unstuck. So I just hope that provides some sense of encouragement for you guys.
That is so powerful. And I love the way that you shared that, because it really just puts so much emphasis on the fact that the feelings of, like I said, being in between, the feelings of being stuck is actually the process. Like it is the process that is leading you to where you actually need to go. And I think another really cool point of reflection that I had when I actually went back home to Texas for a little bit and I was in Austin is I had this really special moment. And it kind of makes me emotional. Everything makes me emotional. But I had a moment where I was like, wow. I mean, life is full of, like, we all have our very individual timelines for our life. We have a very individual sequence of orders in our life. And I had a moment where I was even just, like I said, seeing friends I hadn't seen in so long and, you know, conversating with them, and they were pointing out to me ways that they can tell I've grown and ways that I wouldn't even know I have grown at all. And I had this realization. I was like, I am so blessed with the friendships I have here in LA. But I was looking at so many of my friends in Austin, and I was like, my friends in LA should be thanking my friends in Austin, because I would not be who I am today. I would not have been brave enough to make the move. I would not be sound-minded. I wouldn't have the identity I do. I wouldn't have been as loved as I am. I wouldn't be able to show up as who I am in LA if it wasn't for who I was in Austin. And I just think about the actual years. So I lived in Austin for almost 4 years, and 2 of those years was me wrestling with, God, I feel like you want to move me, or God, I desire to make a change in my life. It was 2 years between first feeling that feeling of wrestling with desiring to move before God actually initiated a move. And I can see so clearly in hindsight, after now making the move, walking in a season of being in the move, establishing my life here in LA, and now looking back in hindsight, God did not allow me to move a moment sooner because he needed me in Austin for 2 more years to be loved by that community, to be shaped by my experiences there, to endure the challenges and discontentment, and walk through a season with my career that radically shifted and literally transformed my whole life to be where I am today. Like everything that had to happen in those 2 extra years of being stuck, quote unquote, is literally the only reason why I'm here in LA today. And it's the only reason why, like I said, I could have showed up as the version of myself that I was when I moved here, that was brave enough, strong enough, secure enough, so many different things that for my story were important for me to have established internally before I could move to LA. So many things also led me to the career path I'm in today. Like, there's way too many details to even dive into. And I think a lot of things in our life are supposed to be so sacred, but like, it is actually insane that there was a part of me at one point in time that wanted to fast forward through those 2 years, when now in hindsight, I'm like, my blessings and the abundance of my life now would not have existed without the stuck feelings and stuck season of life that I was in. And so I share that to say, even the areas that you feel like you are stuck in and that you're seeing nothing change, you don't know why God is keeping you in that place and how it is going to actually benefit you, propel you, and lead to a increase in abundance that you literally could not imagine if you were to already step into that next blessing or into that next milestone or whatever it may be in your life. And so for as stuck as you may feel, at least for myself, I always have to speak over myself of like, I'm not stuck. Like, God is still preparing. I'm not behind. I'm not forsaken. Like, God is still at work. Like, something is being done in secret that I have no idea about. Secret, that sounds like like so funny. But I always just like imagine it truly that like God is like putting on this grand play. And like, think about when you are in the audience and the curtains close, like between scenes, you do not see everyone running around, rearranging things, like rearranging the stage. You don't see the actors going back and doing the outfit changes. Like, you don't see what's happening. But then suddenly, you know, there's the intermission for 15 minutes, but then suddenly the curtains open and it is completely day and night different. And I think that is what is happening in our lives when we feel like we're stuck. The curtain feels closed. We don't see what's happening behind the curtain, but that little span of time in which you feel like nothing's happening, actually everything is shifting in your favor and everything is being transformed and moved around, but you might not see it because it might be those little inches that are growing or those little centimeters that are growing in your life. But in reality, you're going to blink and you're going to realize like, wait, just like the olive tree, suddenly I'm like feet taller than I ever was because of the slow growth that has taken place. And like I said, literally encouraging myself in the process because I need these words as much as I pray that you guys are able to receive these words. So something that I know that I always can forget, which is just so funny how us humans are so quick to forget, but it's truly that for as unpredictable as life is, and I'm sure all of us have things in our life that we could have never seen coming in the best, most beautiful way, maybe also in the hardest, most challenging and testing and trying way. For as much as life is very unpredictable, I think life can also be somewhat predictable in the sense of God's character is so reliable and so faithful. I was actually on the phone with my mom this morning, and I was like kind of just brain dumping to her all the ways that I was feeling stuck and frustrated, and I don't know what's happening and don't know how to move forward with certain things. And then I literally had to stop myself and was like, wait, but I remember God gave me this feeling back then, and look at the way he showed up in that. And I think sometimes when I just take a moment, slow down my mind, and I look back at my life of moments I was discontent or moments I was frustrated or moments I was stuck, and I look back and see how God showed up in the past, and not just once, but multiple times in so many different ways in so many different areas of my life, that I remember at the time thinking, it's never going to work out for me. It's never going to be in my favor. I'm never going to see the blessing come. And then the blessing comes. We walk in the blessing, and then we forget that
happened. Yeah, like weeks later. We're like, okay, what's next? I'm ready.
Exactly. We're always thinking about what's next. And I know I reference it 1,000 times because it is one of my major milestones, but it is my move to LA. I remember being so stuck and thinking, for years, I was like wrestling with that desire, didn't know where that was, literally was almost led astray by my own desires to move somewhere else. And then when God finally revealed it was LA, I was like, oh, that's impossible. There's just no way that would ever work out in my favor. And I remember the roller coaster of emotions that I experienced between the initial desire and then the actual blessing of moving, and watching how God made everything fall into beautiful alignment in his timing. It's like one of those moments that was so powerful, and even so powerful for my parents to witness in my life, that I remember thinking, I will never question God's faithfulness ever again. But then, there's another area of my life years later, there's another thing that I'm questioning, and I'm like, God, I don't even know if you're going to ever be faithful in this area. But it's just so funny. It's so funny how we forget the patterns of God's faithfulness. Like life works in cycles. Like, we are going to always, for the rest of our life, in a beautiful way, in a hard way, in a real way, be ebbing and flowing from high season to low season to in between season. So I think that's where it's like, at least I give myself that hope of like, one, God's character is so faithful. Like, he has proven himself to me, and I always forget, but he's proven himself to me. His track record is consistent. So I know he's shown up in the past, and I know he's going to show up again. And also, just as like God is so faithful, so is the seasons of life that he carries us through. If you're stuck and if you're in an in-between, your high season is going to come eventually. Like, that's just like a promise and guarantee, without even knowing the details of your life and without even knowing what you're going through and the depths of the lows or the depths of the in-between or the depths of the process. There is going to be a moment when you are going to be riding another high, and you are going to be encountering the blessing of another milestone. Like, that is just the way life ebbs and flows. And a final perspective that I was really encouraged by, and it's literally so simple, but I do think the wisdom from someone who is older was very impactful. I was on the phone with my dad just the other day, and I was telling him about my day, and I told him that I was walking back home from the beach, and that I just went to church that day and went to the beach and laid on the beach all day, and now I'm just walking home. And I was like, yeah, it's been a great day, but like not anything super special. And he was like, Brie. He was like, he literally, I'm going to butcher kind of like what he said, but the theme at large was, he was like, when I was your age, I was doing all these cool things. And like, yes, you realize at your age that what you're doing is cool. You're aware. But sometimes what it takes is 30, 40, 50 years of your life to pass by for you to look back and be like, wait, that was a little bit cooler than I thought. And when he said that, he was like, he literally told me, he was like, Brie, what I would give to be able to walk to the beach and be laying at the beach all day and consider that a normal day.
Yeah.
And he's like, don't get me wrong, 30 years ago, or how many years ago, when I was your age in my 20s, I was doing so many cool things, but sometimes what it took was 30 years later to reflect back and be like, whoa, that was even more special than I could have realized in the moment. And I literally told him, I was like, I don't want to wait 30 years to realize what I'm doing is special. And he's like, that's why I'm telling you this. And so all that's to say, if you are in that season of feeling stuck, or if you feel like you're in between, or you feel like you don't have direction for a lot of things in your life, you're waiting on a lot of blessings in your life, and you're like, God, when is this going to happen for me with anything? I still want to encourage you to slow down your thought process and find a moment of stillness of what is one thing that you are going to look back on in your life in this moment that you have, whether it's a friendship, whether it's the place that you live, whether it's growth within your heart, like so many little intricate details of your life. What is one thing that you're going to be like, wait, that was more special than I could have even realized? And hold on to that. Be present with that. Press into that, because I guarantee there's always going to be more things in our life that we can be extra grateful for that we're not recognizing and not seeing just how abundant the gift is that we already do have right now. Even though you may be waiting on a gift, even though you may be waiting on a blessing, even though you may be praying for another milestone, you may be asking yourself, when is this going to change for me? I guarantee even in the process, even in the journey, and even in the waiting, there is still so much to focus and be so grateful for right now. And with that said, I do want to end on Philippians 4:6, which this is like truly a verse that I cannot even tell you guys how much I repeat to myself. But it says, and the peace that surpasses all understanding will guard your hearts and minds in Jesus. And I think the phrase that I always pull from that is, God, give me a peace that surpasses all understanding. Or I love also, give me a joy that surpasses all understanding, meaning despite your circumstances right now, despite what you're walking through right now, despite how you may be feeling, despite feeling lost or discouraged, give me peace that surpasses all understanding, all circumstances. That does not make sense. It may not correlate with exactly where I'm at right now, but give me peace that I have hope in the prospect of what is to come, but also joy in where I am, exactly where you've placed me. So I cannot encourage that enough, because I know that that is so available for you, even in the in-between seasons.
Okay, you guys, for this week's Love Notes, we're going to do a little reflection on our past week. So I'm just going to start with a highlight moment of my week. Something that was really sweet is there's this like pickleball group at our church that's just kind of been like informally, somebody has created this like pickleball group chat, and we play at a college that's nearby, like the courts there, they have pickleball courts. And I went the other week and it was so much fun. And then I just went last night and it was so sweet because my husband's been back home this week. And so I was like, I had such a blast. I just know he's going to have so much fun. And sometimes us being like very different personality types, we notice that it's rare nowadays, I feel like, that we like the same like hobby. Yeah, we just can be like wired differently in that way, but it was so sweet to see. Like, he just had the best time ever. So we all ended up staying there till I think like 9:30 just talking. It's like pitch black and we're all just like talking and laughing, and it was just super sweet. And I love moments like that, and in a way it kind of felt like nostalgic. I don't know if that makes sense, where things can be new but they feel like nostalgic in a way of like life just felt really easy and simple. And I think that's something we don't always get to experience together with the season of life that we're in, of just like those simple, spontaneous moments. And so that was just such a highlight of this week.
That's so sweet. I feel like everyone keeps talking to me about pickleball. I mean, people have been talking to me about pickleball since before I moved to California.
Yeah.
I'm so behind. I still haven't played.
I am so behind. Everyone there, like, you know, when people are like, oh yeah, we don't really play. They are so good.
You're like lies.
I'm like, all of a sudden like one hit and I'm like, what the heck? Like, I feel like I've been tricked. You guys are so good.
That's so
I need to practice and get better.
I need to just practice in general. I mean, my hand-eye coordination is always a struggle, but it's okay. I think that's why sometimes I get scared with like sports with like balls.
Yeah.
I have to like hit like volleyball. Oh my gosh.
Volleyball is hard.
I literally, when I play volleyball, I mean, I'm going to get better this summer, but I will like duck. Like the ball comes at me and I like throw down versus like hit it up.
That is so funny.
I'm like, that's not the point. Okay, so my highlight of this week, which also ties into even this whole conversation today. Okay, so I was in Laguna Beach yesterday, which I don't really go very often, but I went to a little event for a jewelry business that actually, if you guys can see on camera if you're watching, it's where my charm necklace is from.
So cute.
Literally, I'm obsessed. But I went to their like launch event of the new collection that they're having. And all that's to say, there was a girl there who her and I have actually followed each other, I kid you not, since 2017.
Oh my gosh.
2017. What year are we? That's like 7 years. 7 years of following each other. We're both from Texas. And so I remember when we both lived in Texas at the time, we were in not very different cities, but we did live in different cities. And I remember at one point we wanted to meet up with one another, but it just never worked out. It never aligned with our schedules. And so we went years of both living in Texas, wanting to meet up, never met up. And then in 2020, I saw that she moves to California. I'm still in Texas, had no plans of leaving Texas literally for another 4 years of my life. I finally moved to California. Meantime, she moves back to Texas. And then now that I've been in California, she actually moved back to California with her husband and new baby. So sweet. But all that's to say, like, God is just so funny with his timing, and the fact that we have followed each other and I've seen her life on social media for 7 years, and then meeting her in person and being like, I feel like I know you in every single milestone moment in your life. And who would have thought that these two girls from little small towns in Texas would both end up within like the same county in California.
That's so cute.
So crazy. And so we met last night for the first time, and it was one of those moments that was like, I mean, God's handprints were just so all over it. And it was also one of those moments that for as many times as we wanted to meet up before, just as this whole episode was about, it's like God is very deliberate in when he allows things to happen and all the things that need to take place. And so it was just so sweet and honestly kind of emotional because we both felt like we've just known each other, but it was our first time being in each other's presence. And we just talked the entire night. And I actually was sharing with her a little bit of like the feelings of being stuck. And she just encouraged me so much, just as like a friend that I would know forever would. And so it was just so special. And that was definitely like my highlight of my week.
That is so sweet. I love that so much. God is so, it's like crazy how intentional he is with that, where like you will not meet, if you are meant to meet somebody, you will meet them in the perfect timing.
Yes.
That actually, I won't like go into detail with this story, but there were actually a handful of times my husband and I could have met. We were like, I was invited somewhere, he was invited like 2 years prior before we met. That's just like insane. Crazy things like that. And I'm like, like truly, thank you, Jesus, for your like hand in timing, because he's so intentional. But that is cool. So fun. That is our little update. If you guys want to share with us your highlight of the week, you can always DM us. We love hearing things like that. But we hope you loved this conversation and that it was so encouraging, and we will see you in our next one. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Thank you so much for listening. We pray this episode was encouraging and life-giving. If you found it valuable, please share it with a friend, leave a review, and subscribe.
And be sure to follow us along over on Instagram at With Love Always Podcast. Signing off with all of our love always, Bree
and Marissa.